1, 2, 3, audio test.
Hi, this is CB Radio Magazine, and today in front of us we've got the President Washington AM FM single sideband 10-meter ham radio. This is a 10-meter ham radio. It's set up for the 10-meter frequencies. However, there is a modification you can do to make it work on the CB frequencies, and also allows you to get into the freeband frequencies and such, similar to many other export style radios. Of course, it is not a legal CB, so we'll just point that out. The President Washington is similar to the President George that was released by President recently. President George had a lot of features. The President Washington has even more. It is one of the most full-featured radios of this type that we've ever had in front of you. There's a lot to go through. I'm going to try and spend a little more time on the new features today. So some of the things that are on this radio I will show you briefly, but I won't go into detail. I've covered a lot of these in the previous video on the George, also some of the stuff on the President Harrison that's on this radio. So I will reference those videos if you need more information on some of those features. But let's get into it. Grab a drink, sit back. This is going to take a little while, but we're going to try and really show you everything with the President Washington. Like I said, has more features than you can shake a stick at. So let's get into it. Now, the case on the new President Washington is going to look very similar to the President George that they came out. The front bezel is a little different color on the trim and everything. On the back of the radio, the heatsink is going to look very similar, even though it is different, slightly different. There's just some very minor differences between the two. On the right hand side, you got the external speaker jack, the PA jack, a Vox microphone, and a location, as well as your antenna jack, and then you've got your 3-pin power cord connector. The heatsink is unique, has these little screw holes on it so you can mount a fan or fans, and then those can plug in inside the radio. The radio does get a little hot. It's 85 watt rated radio, around 80 watt radio, so you will generate some heat, and those fans can help dissipate the heat if you want to add them. The rest of the radio looks, again, similar to the George, with just a little bit different. On the side, they do have the sticker they put on over there, so if you do break the seal and get into the radio, they will know about it. Alright, features and functions. Starting on the left-hand side, we've got our on-off volume control knob on the inside here, our squelch control knob on the outside, also the automatic squelch control, which is a feature only on President radios. The 6-pin President microphone. This is same microphone's been used on quite a few of the radios recently. It has the up-down buttons. It's a great mic, matches up really well with these radios. The USB port here, you can charge your phone, or you could charge another device if you wanted to using the USB port. The mode button allows you to go between AM, FM, upper sideband, and lower sideband modes. Works really well, easy to scroll through. PA, if you need to get PA hooked up to this, it does have that button. Memory, you can go into M1, M2, and M3, M4 memory locations easily. You can save both the mode and the frequency to flip between those quickly. The CT, CSS, and DCS tones, I'm not going to get into this a whole lot right now. I did cover that in the President Harrison video. If you have questions, that would be a great place to check out that. The President Washington does have a scan feature on it to scan through the frequencies, listen for anybody breaking the squelch. You can set this up a couple different ways in the menu, which is actually kind of handy, so I've gone into that in the George. The dual watch function allows you to monitor a couple different frequencies as well, different way to do it. The A&L noise blank is for cutting back on noise. Same thing with the high cut, gets rid of some of the high pitch noise. Those are all noise reduction features. The RF gain and mic gain buttons on this radio are accessed through the EMG button. You just press it down, long press it for the RF gain. If you want to long press it while you're holding the radio keyed with the microphone, it'll get you into the mic gain. So you can get into those both pretty quickly via that button. The EMG button, if you just press it, it will take you through the 2 emergency channels. You can actually program these in the menu as well and set them to whatever you want. It doesn't have to be 9 and 19. You can customize those if you like. The band button on this radio is a way to kind of go through these banks of frequencies that they've pre-programmed in there. You can jump through and easily go between 24 megahertz all the way up to 29 megahertz, and they're kind of in groups of frequencies. That's the way you can navigate using the band button. There's other ways to navigate the radio, of course. You can use the span feature, which is going to allow you to directly adjust the frequency. The call button is kind of a new one. It's a secondary feature here on the band button, and it's going to allow you to actually send a pre-recorded message out over the air if you want to, or you can press it and have it send out a tone. It works while you're keyed up. If you press the button, it will send a tone. It'll just beep basically at whatever frequency you set it to, or you can pre-record a message and it'll send that when you press it. The Vox button, of course, is for the automated microphone hands-free use if you want to do that. It's something I've gone through in other videos if you want to watch those and learn more about it. NRC is the noise reduction circuit. It works both on transmit and receive, receive, or transmit only. It's pretty easy to navigate through all three. It's a very neat feature. Cuts back on noise quite a bit. Definitely something that's on a lot of the newer radios, and it's a really nice feature, especially for sideband listening. The RX-TX button is the next feature, and this is a new one, so I'll spend a couple minutes describing it here. It is a feature to basically unlock your clarifier using a button, and there's a couple different ways to do it. So if I move the clarifier right now, nothing happens while I'm in single sideband mode. If I move to AM, nothing happens, and the button doesn't even function. I can't even turn it on. However, if I go back to sideband and I turn the feature on, press it once, it'll turn green. Now, when I move the clarifier, I want you to pay attention to the frequency here. You'll see the frequency slides, and it actually shows you actively changing the frequency, which is pretty dang cool. Now, all you guys in the old days, we used to unlock clarifiers so they could slide on transmit and receive. You can just set this to do it on both. You can set it to do it on receive or transmit only, depending on how you want to have it set up. So very neat feature. Basically gives you the unlocked clarifier option if you want to use it that way to tune back and forth. The next feature up here, radio does have talkback and echo. You got to have those together, right? So you can hear what you sound like when you set your echo. So those are features that are on this radio. There is also a lock button. If you hold that down, it will lock up all of your buttons, but it also allows us to access things like our split options. If you press that and then press the NRC button, it takes us into a split. It's not set right now. That is something I'm actually going to demo and show you in the menu functions. So that's another feature, but that is how you would access that. So let's jump into the menu functions next. To access the menu functions on the radio, you hold down the channel changing knob, get you in there. First up option is the color. You can go through any one of the colors they have supplied and choose it for your display. Next up is going to be the dimmer. You can raise or lower the brightness of the screen basically. You can have it be ultra bright, not so bright. Tone control lets you go kind of cut back on lower tones or higher tones on the radio, so that can be nice depending on how you want to tune your incoming frequencies. The key beep, this one is pretty annoying, and we usually leave that one off. The Roger beep, in the video later I will show you all 6 Roger beeps briefly, so you can listen to those. If you were a Roger beep person, there are 6, nothing too crazy, but they are available in there. And get in here. Next up is going to be the indicator. So you can actually have it show the SWR, the timeout timer, or the frequency on transmit. So I will show you guys a quick demonstration of this. If I set it to the SWR feature when I'm back out at the main screen and I key up on the left hand side where the frequency is, you'll see it shows up and goes to SWR. Now if I set this to the timeout timer, I have to get back into the menu. Just have to press it. Timeout timer, and I exit back out. Timeout timer basically will unkey the radio, so you can have it show that if you're a long talker and that's a problem, or you can have it show the frequency when you transmit, and basically it'll show the transmit frequency, which would be the same here, so nothing changes, it just stays on there. I like to have the SWR function personally because it's nice to be able to see that in case something ever goes wrong. The DC temperature, this will allow you to show either the DC voltage or the temperature of the radio, internal temperature of the radio on the front panel. So we have it set to DC now. I'll show you on the right hand side, it shows the voltage. And if we go back into the menu and we change this to temperature, it will show the temperature of the radio. And as you use the radio, you'll see the temperature go up. So if you're a long talker and you're worried about overheating your radio, you can see that there. Scan mode, as I mentioned, there's a couple different scan modes in here. You can read in the manual about those. I've also showed these in previous videos. Scan type, kind of along the same thing. The skip scan or scan skip feature allows you to skip certain frequencies during scanning. The PA allows you to change the type of PA mode. There's 2 modes listed in here. The microphone type, you can go between an electret or dynamic microphone. So if you have an older microphone, it's probably dynamic. You may need to switch that if you decide to use it with this radio. SWR auto is just for testing your SWR. The NRC setting. This is kind of an important one. If you want to set your NRC levels, you can do it for either receive or transmit. They are independent. So you can set it for either reducing noise on your receive or also reducing noise when you transmit. Code set. I went over this pretty carefully in my President Harrison video. If you've never used the codes before or haven't dealt with them, it's something that's really was used in ham radios for hitting repeaters and stuff. But watch the President Harrison video if you're interested to learn more about this, and I'll cover a little bit more to this when we get into the automatic relay setup. The EMG, here's where you can set your 2 channels for emergency. Again, you can change the frequency. You can also do your dual watch set. Split frequency. Split frequency is something we normally just see on ham radios. It's been on a few export radios. It allows you to either choose a negative or positive offset, basically allowing you to receive on one frequency and transmit on another. You can go in and adjust. As you can see, I'm adjusting the different placeholder for the numbers there. So you can choose the amount of the offset. The 2 dashes is a negative. If you have the other way, it's a positive. The span setting is going to allow you to quickly navigate through the frequencies. Earlier I mentioned the band button when I was showing you that, where you could press the button and it would jump A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, and go through the different kind of collections of frequencies that they kind of have preset into those banks, I guess. So the span button is something you probably are going to, most guys would have on this radio, and it allows you to quickly navigate through the frequencies by just tapping. Once it's on, you just tap on the channel changing knob and you can move the cursor basically through any of the numeral positions with the exception of the 2 at the end there, because obviously you can't go outside of the 20 megahertz. But yeah, so I mean, you can go down to 24 up to 29 really quickly. It allows you to manipulate the smallest placeholder, which you can also do with the clarifier, as I mentioned earlier. It all works together. So if you want to set it for something and then slightly adjust it with the clarifier, you can, as you can see here. But again, the span function's probably one of the most useful functions on the radio in terms of quickly navigating where you want to be. And I will mention, once you set it to any of the places, the up-down buttons work as well. Call set. This is for that call feature I talked about earlier. You can either do a frequency. When you press the button, it'll beep, or you can set it to do a pre-recorded message. If we go to the next option here is the message recording, you can go in and play the message that's in there, or you can record the message that you're going to do. And I am going to give a full demo of this feature since it's something kind of new. But again, you just would press the call button. You have to be keyed up on the radio, and I will show you how it all works. It's pretty cool. There's might be some fun stuff you can do with it. The automatic relay, I'm also going to do a full demo. You can try and set it to on. It won't do it unless you set up the code, the CTCSS or DCS code. So I'm going to demo this for you as well. This is a pretty neat feature. It's something I will mention. It's fun. I don't know how useful it's going to be in the real world for people on a regular basis. It kind of makes it into a repeater, but I'll show you guys the full demo of how that works. Band name allows you to customize the 2 letters that are there that show up for the different bands. Volume accessory is something President hasn't told us what the feature's for. It's been on a couple other radios. SWR protection allows you to set the level where you want the radio to shut down if the SWR goes too high. Same thing with the voltage protection. You can set the level. If there's a voltage spike, you can set it so that it will shut down and protect the radio. So those are both really cool features in terms of protecting the radio. Power limitation. Now this is an interesting one. The power limitation feature gives you 2 preset power levels. Well, 3 if you include off, but A4 is kind of like a low power CB radio type option. The A0 is kind of like a dual final type power output level, and then off is full power, of course. And you could use these if you were going to run an amp or something. You just wanted a quick, easy way to set the power. power. When you set the power with these, you still have the option to adjust the RF power level as well to kind of tweak it and customize it right to where you want it. So kind of nice to have those power options, I guess. The next up is the echo level and the echo delay, which I've gone through many times in other videos. Temperature set, you can have it display in Fahrenheit or Celsius. The temperature protection feature is interesting. This is the setting at which the optional fans will start turning on. So the default is 50. If you add the fans, if it goes above 50 degrees, it will turn the fans on automatically. The reset feature has a couple of options in here. You can do the all, which resets everything in the radio. It actually will default it back to 10 meter mode. Or you can choose if you want to reset just certain things that you've changed within the radio. So kind of neat features. So let's jump in and take a closer look at the split function, the message function, and that automatic relay function. All right, let's show you guys this call function. So you go into the menu and you can either choose between frequency or you can choose between the message. So if we set it to frequency, it allows you to set the tone, so what the pitch of the beep is basically going to sound like. And then once you get that set, when I press the call button while I'm keyed up, it will beep. So I'm keyed up. There you go. That's the beep noise it's going to make. So you could use that to make some noise. I don't know, just annoy people. Now that was a feature that was available on the previous model, but the message feature is something that's new. So basically we're going to go in, we're going to record the message. You don't need to key to do it. Here we go. This is CB Radio Magazine.
This is CB Radio.
This is CB Radio Magazine. I think the first time around I didn't I pressed the stop button too soon. So now I can key up with the radio, I can talk and all that, but as soon as I press the call button, it's going to interrupt it. 1 2 3 1 2 3 audio. All right, here we go. I'm going to press the call button now.
This is CB Radio Magazine. This is CB Radio Magazine.
Now, I know you guys are going to do annoying stuff with this, but I thought you might actually be able to do something useful with it. CQ, CQDX, CQ, CQDX, this is 411 Nebraska. All right, so you could use it for calling CQ without having to do it every time. Let's test it out.
CQ, CQDX, CQ, CQDX, this is 411 Nebraska. CQ, CQDX, CQ, CQDX, this is 411 Nebraska.
All right, kind of cool, right? New feature. Hopefully people won't just be annoying with it, and we'll put it to good use. All right, now I'm going to show you guys the split function feature on this radio. I've done videos of radios previously that had split function on them. I never really went into it a whole lot. I've never used it a whole lot. You know, you could use it for hitting a 10 meter repeater using the CTCSS codes if you had one in your local area. Some guys like to do split just between them, just to kind of talk on different frequencies, mess with people a little bit. But anyway, split function, it has two options as I mentioned earlier. It has a plus and a negative, so you can add an amount to the frequency or you can subtract the amount. To get into it, you go in the menu and you set it, which I showed you. To access it here, you press that F key and then the NRC key. And right now you can see we're set up to receive on channel 19 and transmit on channel 38 on 27.385. This is on AM. I've got an anytone up here set to channel 38 AM. And I will demonstrate this for you guys. Basically, I'll key up. It'll transmit on one. It's receiving on another. Now it's transmitting. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 audio. And you can hear it up here on the anytone. 1 2 3. 1 2 3 audio. And there you go. So yeah, as mentioned, it's something that you would use for a ham radio. Is kind of where this is used for hitting a repeater. Usually the repeater would be set up to have an input and an output, and you would set your radio accordingly. And then you would set your CTCSS tone to trigger the repeater. So that's kind of where this comes in useful for a 10 meter radio. But again, if you and a buddy set it up, you could transmit on 38. He'd receive on 38. He'd transmit on 19, and you'd receive on 19. If you were going to try and do a repeater for a 10 meter radio, obviously FM would be where the codes work for this. They don't work on the other modes, so you'd have to set up your codes for it and be on FM. But I'm showing you this just because it's leading in to our automatic relay, and that's kind of where this is going to be important to know what this is for this radio if you are going to use the automatic relay function. So let's jump into that. Okay, the automatic relay function. The first thing to know is this only is going to work on FM. You have to have a CTCSS or DCS code enabled on the President Washington, and then the radio that's transmitting is going to have the right code to trigger it. So you have to go into the menu on the President Washington, you have to go to the codes, and in this case we've selected the CTCSS code 01 for receive and transmit. It's not going to really matter for the transmit, but for the receive at least you have to have that enabled. Then you go to automatic relay and you turn this on. Now the radio is ready to go, and what's going to happen is we're going to transmit with the President George on FM channel 19 with the CTCSS 01 code. It's matched up over here. It's going to transmit. The President Washington is going to record the message and rebroadcast it, and we'll hear it again on the President George.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 audio. Transmitting on the President George FCC. Receiving on the President Washington automatic relay. It's going to transmit this message back out on 19.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 audio. Transmitting on the President George FCC. Receiving on the President Washington automatic relay. It's going to transmit this message back out on 19.
So that's the basic way it works. And yes, if you're the transmitting station, you will hear yourself again when it comes back onto the same channel. However, there's another way to set this up. If we get back out of the automatic relay, you have to use the unlock function to get out of there. We can set up our split function. And with the split function, we can transmit on one frequency and it will record and then rebroadcast on another. So in this case, on channel 19, we're receiving, transmit on channel 38. We can enable our automatic relay again. And in this case, this radio is going to transmit on 19. It's going to go through the automatic relay, and then it's going to come out on 38, and we'll show that on the Anytone up above, up here. So let's give this a try, and you can kind of see how this would work with the automatic relay and the split function.
All right, we're going to transmit on the President George FCC. We're going to receive on the President Washington channel 19. Automatic relay is then going to rebroadcast this recorded message onto the Anytone on channel 38. All right, here we go.
All right, we're going to transmit on the President George FCC. We're going to receive on the President Washington channel 19. Automatic relay is then going to rebroadcast this recorded message onto the Anytone on channel 38. All right, here we go.
So that kind of demonstrates the Washington rebroadcasting using the split function. Now, the President George doesn't have the split function option, so I can't really give you the demo of how it would work if you were the transmitting station. But if the President George was a radio that was set up for split function, say I had a second Washington here, I would be set up to transmit on 19 and receive on 38, just like the other stations, right? So everybody would be transmitting on 19 and listening on 38. And the benefit of that over not having the split function set up on the Washington would be that when I transmit on 19 and it goes through the automatic relay and then it transmits on 38, yes, I will hear myself again, but if we're using the split function, the other stations won't hear me. I would only hear myself when I rebroadcast on 38. If we don't have the split set up, if I broadcast on 19, the other stations may hear me on 19, and then they're going to hear the relay on 19. So that's kind of annoying. So ideally, if you were going to use this, you'd want to use it with the split function setup. You have to set up the codes and everything as mentioned. Only people that had radios that could have the codes could use this. So anyway, that's the automatic relay. I don't know how many people are going to use this, but it is a function on this radio. It's pretty neat. Let's take a look inside the radio case. I got a President George on the left and a President Washington on the right. I wanted to show both radios next to each other for comparison. You can see that the case is similar but a little bit different. There's a lot of things on these radios that are very similar but just slightly different. So first off, just kind of looking at the inside heatsink on the right hand side of the radio. You can see it's actually a little bigger on the George than the Washington, which is kind of interesting. In the back of the George, you'll see it's a standard CB, so it only has the one final. In the back of the President Washington, you've got the extra final for additional power. That's why it's a 80-watt ham radio versus the President George, which is just a standard CB radio. You can see the board number is different, so it is a different number board, not the same board with just different features on it, different components. So they are two different boards. You can see there's an additional board added here, as well as the fan, which we talked about earlier, the optional fans. You can plug them in here. You can do one, you can do two. There's little notches in to run the wires through. The fans mount on the back of the radio. They screw in, and then you'd be able to have it cool the radio. So interesting just to see the differences on the radio where the extras were added on the President Washington. Obviously, they probably designed these around the same time, considering that they knew they were going to make both models, because the boards are very similar. I will point out that if you are going to do the modification for the President Washington, there's an area on the George. So obviously, I tried it on this one. It didn't do anything. On the President Washington, this is an area where you would do the modification. The solder pads are really small, so if you don't feel comfortable doing anything modifying a radio, you definitely want someone else who's a professional to do the work for you. So that is the President Washington, a super feature-rich radio. We covered just about everything in there. The radio, I was running it a little bit here just to get the temperature up. You can see it's up around 43 degrees Celsius, so it definitely warmed up a little bit. The heatsink is heated up just a little bit, I can feel. Didn't hit that 50 degrees, though. That would have enabled the fans, so nice to see it didn't get too hot. A couple things I didn't cover. The NG on the Vox button there, that is the noise gate. You can enable in that and it will cut back on background noise and transmit. You already have that in NRC as well, so don't know if you need both. The talkback is variable. Of course, you can adjust the talkback level. The RF power, you can access that by just pushing down on the channel changing knob while you're keyed up, and it'll get into your RF power adjustment. The features that I think are really cool, the clarifier adjustment on sideband when that's enabled is super neat. I think that's a really neat feature to have on this radio. The President Washington may be the most feature-rich radio I've seen. It's pretty amazing that they've put all this in one radio. If you're an old school guy, don't freak out. You don't have to use everything at once. It's going to be a little pricey, but I think it's probably worth it in the long run if you have this as a long-term radio. I will mention, as always, if you're not a ham radio operator, stay the heck out of the ham frequencies on this. You don't want to get in trouble, and the radios, can do that stuff. If you are a ham radio license operator, it can do some cool stuff. But anyway, President Washington, pretty impressed, been using it for over a month, and I'll let the radio function, say goodbye. Here we go.
Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care and be safe out there.